My dear sisters and brothers, Namaste to all of you, and the love and blessings of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo to all of you from Sri Aurobindo Ashram, Delhi branch. Sri Aurobindo in The Life Divine and several of his other works talks of different levels of consciousness or the grades of the mind, and one of the clearest descriptions comes in The Life Divine, Book 2, Part 2, Chapter 26. What are these grades of the mind? The ordinary mind, higher mind, illumined mind, intuitive mind or intuition, overmind, and supermind. Let's see what these are about. The ordinary mind is a faulty tool, but all the same, we are very proud of it, and the human beings have the best of the mind. But yet, there is a level at which a person can think more in concrete terms than in abstract terms, and the reasoning is rather crude. This is the ordinary mind. But then higher than that is the higher mind, which has a more refined reason and can think in abstract terms. Let's take an example to understand the difference between crude reasoning and refined reasoning. Just listen to these two statements. Asanas are an essential part of yoga because all schools of yoga teach asanas. Now, the second statement. Most of the schools of yoga teach asanas because asanas improve the performance of the body, and the body is the material base of the being. It's an indispensable tool for all action. Now, in the first statement, the type of reasoning is that asanas are an essential part of yoga because all schools of yoga teach them. Now, this assumes that since all schools of yoga teach asanas, after all of them can't be wrong, and therefore they must be an essential part of yoga. So the conclusion that all that asanas are an essential part of yoga has been deduced just from the observation that all schools of yoga teach asanas. Now let's look at the second statement. It says most schools of yoga teach asanas, so not all. So a little refinement, and that is the effect. All schools or most schools of yoga teach asanas. That is the effect. What is the cause? The cause is that asanas improve the performance of the body, and the body is an important tool which is required for all action, and that is why they teach it. So, this sort of difference is a subtle difference, but the you can see that the cause and the effect, or the conclusion and its basis, have been reversed. And the second one sounds much more refined. The first one is sort of a crude reasoning that after all of them can't be wrong. If they're teaching it, must be essential. Now, that is a crude type of a reasoning, whereas this is a proper, refined reason that the most of the schools, not all, but most, teach asanas because the body is an important tool and required for all action, including the type of action which is required in a person on the path of yoga. Now, so a person with a higher mind, whose mind has progressed from the ordinary mind to the higher mind, is capable of refined type of reasoning and can also think in abstract terms. And education in schools should do at least this much: take the child from an ordinary mind to a higher mind. That's the function of education, to refine the reasoning and to develop the capacity for abstract thinking. But all the same, even the higher mind is a rather faulty tool. It is a sort of an ignorance searching for truth. All it can do is, using some sort of refined reasoning, draw somewhat valid conclusions from some data, and it can also sort of help us in research. But all the same, it cannot give us any clear reason why, if there are several conclusions possible from the same set of data, why one particular conclusion has been accepted and the others have been rejected. For that, there's never any clear reason. So reason is a limited tool, a very important tool. Higher mind is a vast improvement on the ordinary mind, but still it does not lead us to the real truth. It only helps us eliminate some errors. It's something like, this proverbial story of seven blind men trying to figure out what an object in front of them is. And depending upon which part they have touched, they come to the conclusion that it was a pillar or it is a fan and so on and so forth, while it was actually an elephant. So the type of conclusions they reach are based on whatever they have felt or perceived with their sense of touch. Now, and then try to reason out what an object which feels like this is. So to be able to actually see what the object is, we need to go beyond thought to vision. And that is what happens at the next level of the mind, and that is the illumined mind. So the illumined mind has an illumination. And what type of illumination? The illumination from the inner light. We have that inner light in the form of our divine essence, the soul, which knows all, but we are not able to reach that truth through the mind because of a barrier. The barrier between the soul and the mind, and therefore the mind functions as an imperfect tool. However, at the level of the illumined mind, the barrier has been weakened. It may not have become totally transparent, but at least it is translucent. And therefore, we can, to some extent, see rather than just think. So it progresses from mere thinking to also seeing. So it is a type of a thought which is coupled with a vision. And that is what an illumined mind is. So as the name itself suggests, illumined, it has been illuminated. It has been illuminated by that inner light. And therefore, instead of just depending upon thinking, now we are able to see. And seeing is much more decisive as well as much faster, because reason is a time consuming, laborious process. And in spite of that, if we depend purely on reason, we never reach a very definitive conclusion. On the other hand, if we see something, we are sure about it. And even if we are not able to see very clearly at the level of the illumined mind, at least some of that inner light which knows everything is affecting or influencing or able coming to the rescue of the mind, and therefore the illumined mind is able to see. It has a vision, and therefore it is much more accurate and can perceive much more of the truth than the higher mind. Higher than the illumined mind is the intuitive mind or intuition. Now, intuition is a revealing flash. A flash, knows no barrier. It's a flash or a flare. While it lasts, it is so bright that it shows us the truth. But at the same time, it shows it only for a moment. It's a momentary sort of a flash, and that's why we call it a flash. And we are aware of those intuitive flashes, but we do not trust them because we trust the mind much more. And it is true that many hunches, which may not be coming from that inner light, can be mistaken for an intuition, and therefore sometimes they turn out to be wrong. But then it also happens that very often we have not trusted an intuition, and then we say later on, oh, I knew it all along. Why didn't I trust that intuition? Now, as the name itself suggests, intuition. So one way to sort of keep it in mind what it is a sort of tuition provided by something inside, something deep within. That is our divine essence or the soul. So the tutor is that inner light, but at the same time, that barrier is broken between this inner light and the mind only momentarily. And therefore, during that moment, the truth has been illumined so brightly that we are able to grasp that total truth, at least some part of the truth, very clearly. But then it shows only part of the truth. Intuition doesn't give us the whole truth. But all the same, it goes beyond even the light or the vision. And therefore, Sri Aurobindo calls the intuition a combination of the truth vision, truth hearing, and truth touch. So vision, hearing, and touch. All these senses put together now are in touch with that inner light, so that what they perceive is the total truth, but only a small part of that total truth, not the truth as a whole, but whatever little bit they perceive, that is very precise. So it's a precise perception of a small part of the total truth because the illumination from the within is total for that brief moment. So there are two limitations of intuition. One is that it shows us only a small part of the total truth. And secondly, that it does not last very long. It is not constant. We cannot organize our life around it. Now, a much a big advance on this intuition is the overmind. Now, what is overmind? Overmind has a global perception, which means there's a total truth. And it is constant, it stays with us. It doesn't disappear in a moment like an intuition. It's not just a revelatory flash, it's something that stays with us. So, perception of the total truth rather than just part of the truth, and it's being constant so that we can organize our life around it. One simple way to remember is that I is just one, intuition starts with an I, and that's just one simple straight line. Whereas O is round, over mind, and that's global. The globe is round. Now, just imagine, somebody writing a small little I, a small little vertical line, which we call an I, uh, somewhere in India, and then that person progresses, upwards, starts moving up all the way to China, and then Russia, and then the other side of the globe, and then uh, the North Pole, and then Canada, and the United States, and the in South America, and then back on this side of the globe, Sri Lanka, and then back to India. Now, what this person has done is he's described a sort of a circle, which we can call an O. So, small little I's, that is I for intuition, have joined together to become an O. So, small little bits of the total truth which intuition can perceive, when it gets completed by other small bits, it becomes total or global, and that is what the overmind has. And at the level of the overmind, it is not only the total truth, but also it stays constant. It doesn't disappear like a flash. Though that's overmind. Overmind is an extremely high level of consciousness, and at that level, also a person, may be considered a seer or a mystic or a rishi. But there is a grade higher than that, and that is the supermind. Now, what is the difference between overmind and supermind? The difference is that even at the level of the overmind, a sense of division stays, which means that the sense of plurality, multiplicity, and differentiation stays in the manifest world or in the manifest universe. And on the other hand, the unmanifest is a featureless vast. So the division between that featureless vast, the unmanifest, and the manifest, which is characterized by plurality, multiplicity, and differentiation, and within that, individual units being separate, that sense of division and separation uh, stays even at the level of the overmind. At the level of the supermind, even that disappears. All appears just one. Whether it's manifest, whether it's unmanifest, the person perceives it, yet does not differentiate because of that difference. And the person is looking only at the deepest reality of even the manifest, and is able to see the same one divine in the manifest as well as the unmanifest. So these are the different grades of the mind, or levels of consciousness, which Sri Aurobindo has given us very clearly in the Life Divine, and about which there's much curiosity. I've tried to simplify them with my limited understanding of these grades of the mind. Thank you.